My name is Natalie Carson, and when I moved back to Jackson, Mississippi after 10 years away, revenge was the only thing on my mind. It had been a decade since I left the town that shaped me and hurt me, a decade since I last saw my father, Richard Carson. We used to be close, back when I was the quiet kid who followed him to his office and helped clean paintbrushes in his hardware store. But all of that changed when he remarried just 2 years after my mother passed, and changed even more when he didn't show up to my high school graduation. We hadn't spoken since, until last spring when I got a letter. Not an email, not a call, an actual letter, handwritten. Natalie, if you ever feel like talking again, I'm still here. The shop is open, so is the door. Dad. I threw it in a drawer and didn't think about it again. Until I lost my job in Austin, until my lease ended, until I found myself driving east on Highway 20 with no real plan except one idea echoing in my mind. He should know how it feels to be forgotten. I rented a small apartment downtown and got a part-time job at the local art center. I didn't go to see my dad right away. I wanted him to know I was nearby, living life just fine without him. But fate had other plans. One day I stopped at a coffee shop, the kind of small-town cafe that doubles as a community board and gossip center. And that's where I met him. Ben Taylor. He was sitting alone at a corner table, flipping through a hardware supply catalog with a cup of black coffee. I wouldn't have looked twice, except the barista called him by name when she brought his order. Ben Taylor. That was a name I remembered. My father's oldest friend. He used to work at the hardware store with him when I was a kid. Quiet guy. Kind. Never said much, but always treated me with respect. I walked over and said, "Ben?" He looked up, surprised, then smiled slowly. "Natalie Carson?" I nodded. He stood up, hugged me like someone who knew ghosts and memories and the heavy stuff in between. We talked for almost an hour that day, about nothing and everything, about how Jackson had changed, about how people never really do. He told me he still worked part-time at the shop, helping with inventory and training the new kid. My dad, he said, still came in most mornings. He still asks about you, Ben said. I shrugged. He didn't press, but he did say this. Sometimes the things people do when they're hurting look a lot like abandonment. Doesn't make it right, just makes it human. I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to stay angry, but I kept seeing Ben. It wasn't intentional, not at first, but we'd bump into each other at the post office, the farmer's market, the park, and slowly those small run-ins turned into coffee chats, then lunch breaks, then helping him carry tools for community center repairs. He was calm in a way that made you want to slow down, too. He listened like it was an art. And he never talked about my dad unless I brought him up. Eventually, I asked him, "Why are you still friends with him?" Ben leaned back and said, "Because when your mom passed, he broke in a way most people didn't see. He just never figured out how to say sorry to anyone." That hit harder than I expected. Then came the flood. Heavy rains, streets swamped, the art center lost power and had ceiling damage. Ben offered to help. He brought supplies from the shop. We worked side by side for 2 days straight. On the third day, I stopped him outside and said, "Why are you really helping?" He looked at me and said, "Because you don't have to forgive someone to stop letting the anger write your story." I stared at him, unsure what to say. He just smiled, handed me a flashlight, and walked back in. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about how long I'd let bitterness be my compass, how it felt like justice, but really it was just weight. I'd come back to hurt someone with my absence, but all I'd done was miss moments I could never get back. The next morning, I walked into the hardware store. My dad was behind the counter. He froze when he saw me. I didn't say anything dramatic, just, hey. And he said, "You came." We talked. It was awkward. It was messy. There were tears, but it was a start. Later, I found Ben sitting outside the store, sipping coffee like always. I sat beside him and said, "You were right." He didn't gloat, just nodded. I added, "I came back for revenge, but I found something better." "Like what?" he asked. "Closure," I said. "And maybe a reason to stay." Ben smiled. "Jackson's not so bad." "No," I said. "It's not." That was almost a year ago. I still live in Jackson. I still work at the art center. I still talk to my dad. And Ben? Well, he's more than just my dad's friend now. He's the one who helped me remember who I was before the anger. And every time someone asks how we met, I just smile and say, "I was surprised at first, but I loved every second of it."